Good morning. My name is Rob, and I'm ready for another video about the Bible and about our current generation. Maybe it's obvious to you, or maybe it's not obvious to you, but since maybe World War II or a little bit before that, Americans have been being groomed for a one world system. And you may find that hard to believe, considering like 100 years ago they didn't have the technology they do now, which is potentially debatable. If you know anything about the man Tesla and his conversations with JP Morgan. But anyways, that's beside the point. The point is, currently 2018, if you look at every area of influence, and there's 7 major areas, and there's probably numerous subcategories from these areas. So we have like government, business, medical and health. We have media, which is like news or literature, music, religion, and education. Those are the main areas of influence. And then you could potentially add technology on there. So look at all of those different areas, and we're being groomed for a one world system. We're being groomed for war, to be a warmongering state, just like Russia and other countries like Iran and even Syria. So that's like the technology part. But even our food is being groomed. Look at our food in the grocery store. Almost every single product has sugar in it. And not only that, almost every single product has some type of preservative, maltodextrin, citric acid, something like that. That doesn't grow on a tree, doesn't grow on a plant. It's a genetically modified organism. And so that's food. But then the legislative process is closing in on individual rights, at least here in America. I can't speak for other countries. And business sector is it's more of a gray area, because some businesses are helping society while other businesses are not very transparent at all, like Monsanto, Bayer, DuPont, stuff like that. And even what they're doing kind of falls into the technological realm. And then religion, oh my goodness. Religion it's like an endless discovery, a rabbit hole. You find out one thing, and then it leads to something else, and then it leads to something else. It is truly overwhelming when you start to look into the Catholic Church. Is just a starting point. But when you start to look into the Protestant Church, and then you start to look at the modern American seeker-friendly church, oh man, not only will you find conspiracies, you find pedophiles, you find bribery and settlements going on, you find drugs and partying, you find adultery, fornication, let's see. And obviously the most heinous thing you would find is, people who's supposed to represent the creator, the possessor of heaven and earth, and yet they're blaspheming his doctrine. They're contradicting it. They're making it up. They're saying whatever they want to say. Truly, in almost every field, every major area of influence here in America, We're being groomed for a one world order, a one world system. So those churches that haven't been exposed yet, they're being used to, bring in the masses, deceive people, however possible. And we're not just talking about Christianity. There's other sects, S-E-C-T. There's other groups out there that are doing the same thing. And their most heinous crime is they're blaspheming the Creator in doctrine, or they're contradicting doctrine, or they're making it up, or they're subtracting it, Okay, so let's stay focused here. My whole point in bringing all this up is we're being groomed. And these are the things that we can pick up on in the natural world. Okay, so if you believe in the Bible, look to the Bible, and then you'll see what's going on in the spiritual realm. So Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, the prophet, clearly tells us some events, some very specific events that will happen in the future. And they did not happen in his day. They were not fulfilled in his day. If you read them and truly believe it or truly analyze it, you'll see not only have they not occurred, but for what he's saying will occur is just cataclysmic. Okay, Jeremiah 16. You might skip to verse 19, but the overall summary of Jeremiah 16 is he says all of the nations collectively will come to the Lord. They will, this is just a phrase, come to the Lord. They're going to assemble themselves in Jerusalem for the sake of Yahweh. And they will confess before him and before anyone else who's there that all the nations inherited lies, vain traditions, and futile myths. Okay? This is what Jeremiah is prophesying will happen. Look through history. Has it ever happened before? Have all the nations come to Jerusalem, assembled themselves before Yahweh for the sake of obedience to the Bible, and confess what they have inherited, their own cultural belief systems, are nothing but vain traditions? Has this ever occurred in the history of man? No. It's quite obvious. Okay, this will happen. It will happen. Turn to Jeremiah 23. Verses 5 through 8. And Jeremiah presents this scenario. He says, he's talking about quotes, like, it is being said currently, thus the Lord, Yahweh, who brought the people out of Egypt. And he says, no longer will people use that phrase. Why? Because thus it will be said, the Lord Yahweh, who brought up the remnant of Israel from the land of the north and all the lands, the west, east, and south. So a huge dynamic shift is taking place. That's what Jeremiah is telling us. And look at the Jews. Every year they celebrate Passover. Even in the 7th month, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, they still talk about freedom from Egypt. Every year they talk about this freedom from Egypt. And then they also add on to it, next year in Jerusalem. Okay? So the Jews are living out this phrase every year, and they're remembering it. Oh, Yahweh brought us up out of Egypt, from the house of bondage. Well, soon enough, it will be said, the phrase that will replace that, at Passover and at the 7th month feast, the high holy days, it will be said, Yahweh, who brought up the remnant of Israel from the land of the north and all the lands, from the west, the east, and the south. So these are the things that can encourage us as Bible-believing, children of God. We know that God created the earth. We know that we're made in His image. We know that there are angels all around us, helping us, fighting for us. We know that there are demons all around us, trying to hurt us and inflict torment upon us, or, give in to their devices. It happens every day. So the best defense we could possibly have is to not only read the Bible, but believe the Bible. Don't let a man, a pastor, a seminary guy, whatever, don't let these people convince you otherwise based off of their traditions to not believe in the prophecies. Because read the letters of Peter, and he clearly tells you the prophets looked into these things intently, wanting to know which generation it would be applied to. And Peter says it's applied to us. Yeah, he wrote that 2,000 years ago, but we're still here. Messiah hasn't returned, so it still applies to us. Those prophecies that the prophets have written down apply to us. And don't ever let a pastor or a seminary professor or anyone else tell you otherwise. In the Torah and in the book of Revelation, there's a warning. It says, to whoever adds to this book, God will add to him curses and plagues. And to whoever subtracts from this book, God will subtract from them, from their share from the tree of life, their share of life. He will subtract eternal life from them because they have subtracted from His word. And then in the Gospels, Jesus talks about how whoever makes these little ones, quote unquote, little ones, stumble, it would be better for them if they were never even born. So yes, I'm referring to religious and spiritual deception that causes anybody, however old or young they are. Little ones refers to the children of God. So whoever is making God's children stumble religiously and spiritually, stumble away from the word, stumble away from the prophecies that were given to us, it would be better if they were never born. Do you see the seriousness of what is taking place around us? It's not about tainted food and tainted legislation and warmongering states. It's not even about that. It's about people are being led astray from the very thing that could encourage them, the Word of God. They're being led astray from things in the Word that not only can guide them through tribulation, through these hard times, but if you learned that for yourself and it helped you, you would share it with others. So we're talking about a multiplication factor here of encouragement that could be taking place. But those who are in charge of spiritual matters have deemed, the prophets, they don't speak to us. All of those things are fulfilled. We're just waiting for this fantasy of a rapture to somehow, beam us up, Scotty. Beam us up, Scotty. It's not going to happen. It will not happen. These are the lies that these spiritual leaders have replaced. They've replaced God's prophecies with lies. The rapture, the replacement of Israel, when the Old Testament and the New Testament say the nations will attach themselves to Israel. Isaiah chapter 14, Ephesians chapter 3, the nations will attach themselves to Israel. And if you don't believe that, read the book of Revelations. The New Jerusalem comes down out of heaven. It has 12 gates, and those gates have the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. So in other words, if you're a children of God and you want to get into the city of God, you have to enter in through one of the tribes of Israel. Do you see the dilemma here? We're not just a bunch of goyim. We're not just a bunch of Gentiles who, we're living by grace only. Like, wake up to reality. The reality is in the scriptures. Israel is God's chosen nation, and they haven't even been back to the land. What you see in the land today is the remnant of Judah, and they're proclaiming on their national flag, on the state of Israel, the flag of Israel, they're proclaiming in a pagan symbol. This Star of David is absolutely pagan. The witches use it in their witches' ceremonies that they perform every night while we're sleeping. They use this 6-pointed star to cast spells upon the city that they live in, or, so on and so forth. So clearly, there must be some cleaning up for the state of Israel. Clearly, God will regather his elect, his children, and they will be proclaimed as Israel with the appropriate banner, with the appropriate flag, and with the appropriate culture, which is the biblical culture, led by the Spirit of God. So what we're looking at here is the world wants you to believe we're going towards a one world system. We're going towards a utopian. It's not going to happen. What we're about to experience is a World War III. WW3. World War. Oh, man. Somebody help me out. And don't make fun of me. All right. World War III is what we're headed for. Okay? So let that sink in. Our current way of life will be upheaved. God's people will be gathered back to the land. What's left of the nations will be jealous of Israel. They'll attack us. They'll set up the abomination of desolation. Then God's people will flee to the desert, where they will stay through the duration of the tribulation, which is a 3.5-year period. So for 3.5 years, this Antichrist and his system will exist. But towards the end of that time frame, God will release the bowls, the plagues that is spoken of in the book of Revelation. So even though this guy is going to be in charge, this Antichrist will be in charge, he will experience the plagues from heaven. So this is the system, this is the plan decreed for us. It's written in the Bible. It's very clear. Even a simple person like myself can understand it just by reading the Bible. Israel will be regathered. And then at the end of all this tribulation, the nations will assemble themselves in Jerusalem, what's left of the nations, and they will confess everything they've inherited is vain tradition, lies, and myths. And then they will submit to Yahweh in his Bible, his Torah. Okay, so I hope all of that makes sense to you, and thank you for listening.